Ganesha runs over without hesitation and hugs Yuria tightly. She is filled with pure excitement as she welcomes her back. People nearby quickly step in, telling Ganesha she is being too rough and reminding her that hugging someone that tightly might be a little too much. Someone even jokes that it borders on child abuse. Ganesha pulls back right away with an embarrassed grin and apologizes with a light-hearted tone. Yuria's face, though, turns quiet and thoughtful. The smile on her face fades as her mind drifts to the past, returning to the moment everything changed. On that day, she had been caught in the same blinding light that took Woojin from his office into this world. That same light had swallowed her as well, pulling her out of reality. Everything around her disappeared in a single moment. Not even sound remained in that frozen space. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself in a world completely unknown to her. The very first voice she heard in this new place belonged to Ganesha. In that moment, Ganesha had been upset and was questioning why Deculin would involve a child in such a mission. She had said she would not accept it, complaining about the situation. Others responded, pointing out that she had already accepted the job, likely influenced by Deculin's appearance. The midget guy warns her about the cost of canceling the mission. Looking at the familiar faces gathered around her, Yuria began to realize something deeper. These people standing before her were not strangers. They were characters from the very story she had once helped bring to life. She remembered staying up through countless nights with her development team, working hard to give these characters meaning and purpose. Now they stood in front of her, alive in this strange and vivid world. Ganesha walked over and spoke gently, asking if her name was Yuria. Yuria had looked around, letting the air, the sea breeze, and the faces around her sink in. The presence of Ganesha and the Redstone mercenaries triggered more memories, and the scent of salt water mixed with the warmth of sunlight had made it feel real. She was really in the game she created. In a soft, slightly uncertain voice, she confirms to Ganesha that she is Yuria. Back in the present, Yuria reflects quietly to herself. That was how she ended up inside the very game world she had once helped create. Not far from her, Ganesha is busy trying to keep order. She scolds Leo and Carlos, who are running around without a care. She warns them to stop before they end up hurting themselves. Yuria looks down at the hand holding hers. It belongs to Ganesha, the strongest adventurer in this world. In her current situation, survival comes first, and staying close to Ganesha seems like the smartest choice. That way, she can stay safe for now. When the moment comes and she finds a bit of time, she plans to look for a way back to her original world, whatever it takes. Meanwhile, in the huge mansion of Deculin, he has just received a delivery from the Magic City. He opens the parcel with quiet excitement, knowing exactly what it contains. Inside the box is a magic wand he had specially ordered. It is the Deculein wand, designed by a master craftsman and created specifically for Deculein von Grahan-Yukline. Its special effect allows it to store up to 500 mana. The wand can also act as a supporting circuit, which naturally enhances the power and quality of spells cast through it. Deculin holds the wand in his hand and takes a quiet moment to admire it. The craftsmanship is perfect, the design smooth and elegant. More than just beautiful, it is engineered to sync precisely with the user's magical frequency, allowing spells to flow effortlessly and more powerfully. One unique feature of the wand catches his attention. It can adapt its appearance to match whatever outfit the user wears. Even this one has an item trait, and that is Yuclin's bloodline. It is said to carry extraordinary power capable of exorcising or expelling demons. Deculin runs his fingers gently across the wand's surface, thinking to himself that the original cost of 9 million lien had felt extreme at first. But now, holding it, he sees that its value far exceeds the price. This is not just a beautiful object. It is a masterpiece in function and form. With this wand in hand, he feels that the path ahead will be much smoother. A voice calls out from behind the door just as Deculin finishes admiring the wand. It is their butler, Roy, who announces that dinner is ready. Deculin turns slightly and gives a calm reply, saying he will be there shortly. He soon takes his seat at the dining table, where a lavish spread of gourmet dishes waits for him. He raises an eyebrow in quiet confusion, thinking that something feels off. Their financial situation has not been stable, so he wonders why the meal is more extravagant than usual. Across the table, his half-sister, Yuria, is sitting with a slight pout on her face. She tells him that the fancy dinner is intentional, something she calls a motivational meal. She insists that energy is important, and says she arranged it to help him stay strong and focused. From behind, Roy adds more explanation. He reminds Deculin about the ancient artifacts they sold based on his instructions. According to Roy, the response was far beyond what they had expected. The moment the items were listed, buyers rushed in from all directions. The demand was so high that it nearly overwhelmed the auction. Roy explains that both he and Lady Yuria could hardly believe what they saw. It felt like a dream, and the money earned was enough not only to wipe out all debts, but also to support the household for years ahead. Yuria glances at Roy with a slight glare and cuts him off before he goes on too long. She turns back to Deculin, her voice gentler now, saying that the dinner is her way of thanking him and asking him to accept it. Deculin stays silent for a short moment, then gives a soft smile and says the food is delicious. Yuria, always quick with a sharp comment, smirks and teases him by saying he might actually know what he is doing for once. The two siblings continue eating in rare peace. It is uncommon for them to share such a calm, pleasant moment at the table. But the peace does not last long. Deculin casually comments on how Yuria is holding her knife the wrong way. She snaps and says, "Oh, come on." Time passes, and later inside his office at the academy, Deculin sits at his desk flipping through a thick stack of old papers. His irritation grows with each page he reads. Midterms are approaching fast, and he is trying to come up with proper questions for the exam. To find inspiration, he decides to look through the old materials left behind by the previous version of himself. That turns out to be a mistake. The papers are filled with absurdly difficult problems, crafted with cruelty more than care. He thinks the old Deculin must have designed these not to test students, but to break their spirits. Each question seems soaked in arrogance, as though it was written by someone obsessed with proving superiority. Deculin reads them and hears the voice of his past self echoing in his mind, loud and pompa, calling himself the noble of nobles, the supreme archmage, and daring students to face his exam with despair. The more he reads, the more disgusted he feels. Even the smallest detail reflects how petty and prideful the old Deculin was. The exam was not a measure of growth or knowledge. It was simply a weapon to crush others beneath the weight of complexity. Deculin sets the papers aside with a firm decision. He is not that man. He has no desire to walk the same path or carry on that same empty pride. He does not believe that difficulty alone makes a great test. Instead, he wants to create something better. Questions that are challenging, yes, but filled with meaning. Questions that leave students thinking, even after they are solved. He wants to write problems that teach something important, that spark admiration and awaken real understanding of magic. To him, a truly great question is like a spark. It can open a path and shape a future. He knows that every choice he makes as a professor, every lesson and every word, could become the very thing that pushes a student forward toward greatness. With that thought in mind, Deculin looks toward the last unopened box of documents beside him. He wonders if there might still be something valuable hidden inside. He reaches for a sheet from the stack, pulls it out, and begins to read. His eyes widen. The question before him is nothing like the others he had reviewed. It stands out, refined and elegant. It carries a depth and pull that none of the previous ones had. It does not feel like something written by the old Deculin. It feels entirely different, as if the author was someone else. A memory stirs within him, bringing forth the image of Ephraim's father. He begins to wonder if this question might be part of the original Deculin had stolen from the man. The difficulty is still high, matching the usual standards. But the core of it is different. It explores magical principles in a way that sparks curiosity and passion. It feels like something meant to inspire, not intimidate. He senses that if someone were to solve the problem with real magical understanding and deliver that answer with mana properly guided through the exam paper, something special would happen. That thought barely forms before the paper in his hands begins to glow. Streams of mana erupt from it, swirling around the room in radiant waves of color. The energy flows freely, waking from a long sleep and responding to the magic within the question. The colors dance through the air before converging, gathering their power and fusing together into a shape. The streams form a human figure, a girl made entirely from magical energy born from the answer. He looks up at the forming image, feeling a rush of excitement. What he sees is fascinating. The spell doesn't just end with a solution, it brings the concept to life. Each color represents a different elemental attribute, and their perfect harmony forms something beautiful and intelligent. It is a true embodiment of magical understanding, exactly the kind of learning tool he had always hoped to create. This moment fills him with admiration, but underneath that something else rises, a sharp and heavy feeling jealousy. It stirs deep in his chest, because even the former Deculin must have known how elegant this question was. The kind of fusion between theory and beauty that someone like him could never create with natural talent alone. He continues to look at the magical figure now floating before him. A thought crosses his mind, wondering who this woman is. If this problem did come from Ephraim's father, then maybe the figure was modeled after her mother. In the headmistress's office, a soft rustle breaks the stillness as she flips through a freshly delivered document. It is the official summary of the latest Magic Council meeting. She reads the document aloud, noting that the issue concerning the Bloodshred race has been deferred to the next session. The paper carries the stamp and signature of Grand Elder Burke Desicton, confirming the decision. She holds the document in one hand and murmurs thoughtfully to herself. The result of the debate is unexpected. The council has made a complete shift in direction, and what catches her attention most is the name tied to that shift. Professor Deculin. He had strongly objected to the suppression strategy, a position that surprises her. The idea that Deculin would oppose something so forceful and absolute feels strange, even out of character. She then slowly turns toward the other professors seated behind her, all sitting quietly. She looks at them for a long moment and reflects aloud that they, too, have to attend the next session. The headmaster of the Royal Academy's magic tower, Deculin, is known as a mage of overwhelming magical ability. Many consider her the strongest candidate for the title of Archmage. Yet her personality stands in sharp contrast to her title. Gentle and kind, she is endlessly curious about the world and often shows a lighthearted fascination with gossip. Her warm and childlike nature surprises many who expect a cold and distant figure. There is a reason behind her nature. Deculin carries a secret. Her bloodline is not fully human. She is a half-fairy, and this heritage is the true source of her powerful magic. Despite her strength and status, there is one day she looks forward to every month, the monthly Tower Conference. It is a gathering where all professors report directly to her. All, except for Deculin, who makes a habit of skipping the meeting every time. Back in the present, Deculin is sitting with other professors, sipping from her teacup as she lets her gaze sweep gently across the room. She reflects on Deculin's recent actions. He had once again defended someone labeled a heretic. She finds it fascinating. She imagines Deculin proud and unshakable, walking through the academy with the air of someone who believes he owns every corner of it. She thinks to herself that he is the kind of man who would say he has no need to please anyone. But this time, something feels different. Just as her words fade, one professor raises a hand and informs her that Lady Ruina is expected to attend the upcoming Grand Magic Assembly. Deculin blinks, quickly connecting the pieces. Ruina is the same woman who once competed with Deculin for the position of head professor. She had withdrawn her claim after one of Deculin's schemes forced her to step down. Since then, she had been living in another kingdom. A mischievous smile begins to form on Deculin's lips. The news surprises her. She wonders aloud what brought Ruina back so suddenly, and why is she returning to the Empire. The lanky professor lets out a nervous laugh and says that if Ruina is offered a seat, she would return immediately. He adds that her return would be a great gain for the Magic Tower, since her accomplishments abroad have been nothing short of impressive. He then shifts the topic, mentioning Deculin again, this time bringing up his recent defense of heretics. He quickly tries to clarify that he is not criticizing the current head professor, but the hesitation in his voice reveals his real thoughts. Deculin catches on instantly. There is no hiding anything from her perceptive eyes. Still smiling, she waves off the awkward professor with a cheerful hum. She tells them that if Ruina truly returns, she will consider what to do next. Then she ends the meeting, reminding everyone that her schedule is full and she has many things to handle. She claps her hands once and adds with a playful wink that those who have not yet submitted their exam questions need to hurry up. With that simple closing, the professors brighten and quickly rush out of the room, thankful for her lighthearted mood. Once the last professor leaves and the room is quiet again, Deculin's cheerful expression fades. She leans back in her chair, a thoughtful look settling in her eyes. She starts wondering about Deculin. She notes that he has been acting strange lately, especially after seeing the midterm exam he submitted. The quality of the test is so high that it is hard to believe he created it on his own. She plays with a strand of her hair, thinking aloud that it is almost too brilliant for someone like him. She wonders if someone ghostwrote it and smiles at the idea of teasing him just to see how he reacts. Suddenly, she gasps and straightens up with excitement. The thought of Ruina returning and possibly clashing with Deculin again fills her with anticipation. She trembles with joy and lets out a squeal of delight. To her, this could be the start of something very entertaining. Time moves quickly, and a few days later the pure elemental magic comprehension midterm finally arrives. The lecture hall is filled with noise and confusion. Voices rise everywhere, students reacting with disbelief and panic. Many cannot believe what they are seeing. Some stare at the exam in shock, calling it a spiritual trial rather than a test. Others joke about dropping the class entirely. Groans and low murmurs of despair fill the room, spreading like a wave of hopelessness. At the front of the hall, teaching assistant Alan claps his hands and tries to restore some order. He tells the students to calm down and explains that he understands the exam looks unusual. He reassures them that everything is written clearly and intentionally, and there is no mistake. He gestures toward the large stacks of parchment and scrolls arranged neatly before them. He explains that the midterm will last 10 days, ending at midnight on Sunday, which marks the close of the academic week for the Magic Tower. Each student will take the exam alone in their assigned private study chambers. During that period, they are allowed to attend other classes, eat, rest, and sleep as needed. But one rule must not be broken. The exam must stay inside their study chamber at all times. Alan ends his explanation with a calm smile and confirms that it is, in fact, an open resource test. On the far side of the lecture hall, Julia fidgets with clear anxiety. She leans closer to her friend, Efirine, and speaks quietly, unable to hide her stress from the idea of a 10-day open book test. To her, it feels like an impossible challenge. Beside her, Efirine is already pulling at her own hair in annoyance. She grumbles about her bad luck, thinking that of course something like this would happen right at the last minute. She also notes with growing irritation that Deculin has not even shown up to deliver the instructions himself. Instead, he has passed the entire task on to his assistant, leaving the students to figure it out on their own. Meanwhile, Alan continues to speak from the front of the room with his usual cheerful tone. He adds that the professor asked him to share one more detail with the class. Anyone who manages to achieve a perfect score will receive a letter of recommendation, personally signed by head professor Deculin. That single announcement causes a visible shift in the room. A wave of surprise and excitement spreads through the lecture hall in an instant. The moment students hear that name, the atmosphere changes. They begin to look at one another with wide eyes, filled with sudden motivation. A letter of recommendation from Deculin is something powerful. It carries weight, and everyone knows it. To understand the sudden excitement spreading through the class, one must first understand the ranking system for mages. Magic users are divided into levels, starting from rank 1, the weakest, all the way to the title of Eternal Archmage. The 11th rank is still a subject of debate. But unlike regular school systems, advancing through these ranks is not a matter of simply completing classes. Advancement requires surviving harsh, demanding trials. That is why a letter of recommendation from someone like Deculin, who holds the title of Monarch Class Mage, holds such enormous value. Such a letter can open countless doors, provide special exemptions, or even nearly guarantee a rank promotion. The students can barely contain their excitement. They whisper and chatter, faces lit with new determination. However, one student remains unaffected by the news. Efirine sits still, her expression showing more annoyance than joy. In her mind, the idea of getting a letter from Deculin is not a reward. It feels more like an insult. She considers him arrogant and difficult, the last person she would ever want help from. But then, a sudden idea sparks in her mind. If she did score perfectly, he would be forced to recognize her. The thought grows quickly. Her imagination begins to spin a strange scene where Deculin kneels at her feet, defeated and begging for forgiveness, his pride shattered. She pictures herself triumphant, one foot proudly placed on his head, feeling the thrill of revenge through academic success. She says to him, if only he hadn't written her that recommendation back then, he wouldn't be crawling under her feet today. He continues pleading, addressing her as the great Efirine, requesting to show mercy. The absurd image is too much. Efirine begins to giggle quietly, shoulders shaking from the effort of holding it in. Julia, sitting close by, leans over with concern. She seems unsure if Efirine is all right. But Efirine does not notice her at all. In her mind, this has become something more than a test. It is now a chance for poetic justice through perfect grades. Time moves quickly. By the 4th day of the exam, Efirine has already given up on the idea of scoring perfectly. Her study chamber is a mess, filled with scattered parchments, and her eyes stay locked on one particularly chaotic page. She mutters to herself about the madness of it all, how each hour spent solving only seems to lead into another wall of complexity. Even after spending 4 hours, then 10, the questions only grow more difficult. She stares at one solution path and can't even recognize her own handwriting. But buried under the frustration, something stirs. Despite how draining it is, a spark of joy still lives in her chest. This test may be brutal, but the moment something finally makes sense brings her a kind of happiness that she never expected. However, she admits that the questions are brilliant, and each solution feels like a magical switch flicking on inside her head. Painful, yes, but strangely addicting. She clenches her fist, holding onto that tiny flame of determination. In her mind, she promises to push through and beat this exam, to prove herself. But when her eyes fall on the next question, her confidence wavers again. The problem makes no sense to her at all. Her energy drops, and she slumps over the desk. She sighs quietly and thinks maybe taking a short break will help her think more clearly. Outside the study chambers, Sylvia stretches her stiff shoulders and lets out a long sigh. It has taken her 30 hours to solve a single question, and the exhaustion shows in her eyes. She brushes her hair away from her face and remembers what Alan said earlier about the letter of recommendation. To her, the letter feels unnecessary, almost like a formality. Anyone who could finish this entire test would already be strong enough to pass the advancement trial without help. Still, her thoughts begin to shift. This exam is different. Each problem feels like a carefully placed lock, and solving them unlocks something deep inside her. The fire inside her isn't burning for recognition or a signature. It is fueled by a need to grow, to become someone stronger, to reach her own vision of a true mage. In that moment, a voice calls out from the hallway. Sylvia turns and sees Efirine approaching. They pause, eyes meeting in quiet surprise. Almost at the same time, both ask each other what question the other is on. Their words overlap and then fall into silence. Faces redden slightly as they look away in awkward timing. Sylvia answers first, mentioning she is working on question 8. Ephraim reacts with shock and admits she is still stuck on the 7th. Sylvia quickly adds that she hasn't finished it yet. Ephraim, flustered, says Sylvia must be really fast. But what Ephraim doesn't realize is that Sylvia is also surprised. She didn't expect Ephraim to be right behind her. In her mind, Sylvia wonders if Ephraim is bluffing, but decides not to doubt her. This is a moment to stay focused and move forward. With new motivation, Sylvia suddenly rises to return to work. Ephraim asks if she's leaving because of her. Sylvia simply says she has rested enough. Ephraim watches her go with a small smirk and quietly thinks to herself that Sylvia doesn't need to explain. While the midterm exam continues at the Tower of Magic, Deculin remains alone in his private study, far removed from the chaos of spells, parchment, and sleepless students. In one hand, he holds a freshly printed newspaper, the ink still warm to the touch. Across the front page, the headline stands out in bold letters. Emperor Krabame is reported to be in critical condition. He reads each line carefully, taking note not only of the words but of what is deliberately left unsaid. The Empire's press chooses every sentence with caution, yet the message is clear. This is the beginning, a quiet murmur escapes him. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button as today's goal is 1,500 likes. Comment next part down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.